Hey, this is SXE Blues, and I'm doing this podcast as a sort of response to a comment I had on my previous video, my follow-up theory for the first episode of Series 6 of Doctor Who, The Impossible Astronaut. I had a comment from username MyTubeVersion3, and he or she said, in reference to some of the dialogue in The Impossible Astronaut, 1103 and still young, question mark. Okay, then what about the first Doctor? He grew old, died, and then regenerated. How about in The Sound of Drums, when the Doctor was forced to grow older and humiliated by the Master? With all due respect to Stephen Moffat, he should give a better explanation of this. The reason I wanted to address this is because I think it's a very interesting topic. Because definitely there are many varied, thoughts and theories and things out there in existence. And I'm somewhat of a writer, imaginative, and whenever I see plot holes erupt in something I'm fanboyish over, whether it's Star Trek, Doctor Who, a movie, whatever, usually I sort of take in all the information available, whether it's what we've seen on screen in the story, all the facts presented there, as well as, if available, things that have been discussed in interviews with the writers or the directors about what their intent was and what their vision was. Take, for example, if a scene is cut from a movie and it's not addressed, but it was intended to be addressed, and it would serve the story better, I kind of loosely consider that in my appraisal of, the finished product. So in the case of this, the aspect of, how can the Doctor be considered young at 1100 some odd years old? And looking at the examples he or she mentioned, I thought I'd kind of just, play around with the idea and talk about it a little bit. Because surely in the history of Doctor Who, it is something that has been all over the place. And the simple reason for that is we all have to keep in mind that Doctor Who was created and debuted back in 1963. And through those many years that it's been around, 11 actors have portrayed the Doctor. A whole cast of companions have come and gone. But most notably, behind the scenes, we've had many showrunners and controllers and writers come and go. Now, each of these people, thus representing their own creative department, all had their own essential, mission statement, their own, what they were trying to get across, what their, goal was. And so all these things are not going to come together and gel perfectly because everyone's got their own point of view, everyone's got their own creative spark, so to speak, and it'll go in different directions, almost always. So we have to take into account, and I believe this is back when, the 2005 series began, and I was, just sucked in by it, and I began to get really curious about all the Doctor Who, the older Doctor Who, and luckily, because I'm across the pond from the UK, a lot of the older stuff has made it across the pond, so to speak, and I've poured over a lot of it. And many a time do they reference that, the conflicting visions of, writer versus director versus BBC controller and so forth, which lends validity to my point. But essentially, there have been Doctor Who fans since the inception. And whenever there are these, continuity points that don't sync up or poorly explained story elements, I remember when I was starting to get into the older Doctor Who, back in 2005, 2006-ish, that I read about a either book or website or both called The Discontinuity Guide that I assume is, from Doctor Who fans and Whovians who, like me, see these mismatched facts in the history of Doctor Who, and I don't know if they just catalog all the discrepancies or if they take it the one step further that I usually do in my own head and fill the plot holes and missing sections of the story that would better explain everything. But in regard to Stephen Moffat's handling of it, that's the one aspect I disagree on, because I believe with Series 5 he did deal with it with one sentence. Time can be rewritten. This is a very powerful, very effective sentence. Essentially what this means is, from the inception of Doctor Who, going all the way back to 1963, any element in the history of Doctor Who that does not syncopate with the overarching chronology of the show, essentially that's because it's forever changing. It's never going to remain one straight line. It's going to be just like the Doctor's life himself, out of sync with time. But if we focus in on the age factor, not taking in all of the, outworldly view, if you will, if we look at it from within the framework of Doctor Who, like mindset, here are my thoughts on it. Taking the first reference of the first Doctor reaching seemingly an old age point where the regeneration process is like a natural occurrence, has to save his life, because I think it was the story of the 10th Planet. I'm not sure if that's the one that was William Hartnell's final. So I don't know exactly what transpired in that episode to cause the regeneration, but I'm just going to loosely take it into account that it was, he reached a point where, as he said many times, he was on the run. Was he running from the Time Lords, rogue aliens, countless horde of nemesis, as yet unseen by us, the debut viewer. Who knows? But essentially, he's led, I believe, somewhat of a traumatic life. So, to say his Time Lord mind, body, and soul, if you will, was under a lot of stress wouldn't be too far of a jog, because we have the regeneration. It does happen. Case in point 2 that I would like to make is the second Doctor. Upon his final story, the War Games, I believe, it is his people, the Time Lords, who seem to forcibly cause his regeneration. They are essentially punishing him for all his rogue living up to that point. Adventures we have seen, and probably a lot of things we haven't at that point. So let's, using this, focus on the regeneration cycle first and foremost. I look at the regeneration cycle as almost being like a speed limit. Age is, the interstate highway, or, whatever you want to call it. And regeneration cycle is the speed limit. Essentially, Time Lords, I think, have an extremely long age process. You say the Doctor at 1100 some odd years old is still considered young. Well, we've never had an actual, clocked description of what the age range of a Time Lord is, or how they gauge it. 1 year to us human beings could be, a day to them, could be a month. They could live to 5,000 years old. And if you take that into account, well, yes, the Doctor at 1,000 years old would be relatively young. I think what really messes with your mind, and not the commenter specifically, I mean the overall you, the Whovian fandom, or casual viewer, what can mess with your mind is the two conflicting ideas of the natural aging process and the regeneration process. These are two separate elements that come together to form a cohesive whole. And I believe that, as I said, using the analogy of it being like a speed limit, it's a rule system, a guidance system created by the Time Lords when they were around. Case in point, if you look at the Master in the Five Doctors, by that time he's exhausted his first regeneration cycle. Chancellor Barusa, I think it is, in that story, says, essentially to the Master, if you do our bidding, we will give you a completely new regeneration cycle. You make us happy, that's your reward. So there is concrete proof, if you will, that it is a rule system. It is something governed, not a natural process. Further evidence of this would be when the second Romana debuts. I don't remember the name of the story off the top of my head, but I know Daleks were in it. Maybe Destiny of the Daleks? No, I'm not sure. But she is seemingly, and this is a point of a rife debate that I've seen online going a few years back, that she seemingly can control her regenerations at, like on a whim. I said in a previous podcast I did, we don't really know because it's never thoroughly explained, and I think this is the issue the commenter kind of doing this whole podcast about. I think that's the gist of the point, is that it hasn't been explained well enough. But I don't think it needs to be, because, again, Stephen Moffat has the line, time can be rewritten. What conflicts in the past doesn't really matter, because things have changed per story. And that's an in-universe way of looking at it. But it definitely seemed like Romana could control her, whether she was projecting, as I said in the previous podcast, the Companions podcast I did, or whether she was actually legitimately regenerating is rife for debate. But essentially, I look at the Time Lord lifespan. Who knows how long they can live? It's never really been legitimately addressed. And I don't think it needs to be, because if you have all the questions answered, where's the conflict that can crop up? Where's the mystery and the awe of the character of the Doctor? The Time Lords are gone now. And so there's a lot of concern about, well, how is the Doctor going to live beyond 13 regenerations? Well, frankly, we don't know that he has to, because I believe, taking the evidence into account and the ever-changing tide of Doctor Who, that will never be a straight line, that will always be fluctuating, and things will always be changing, just as it happens in the real world. The way I look at it is that maybe he doesn't need to. It's that simple. Is he still young? Yes, I believe he is, because Time Lords can conceivably, through evidenced by what we've seen of them, they can go on for a pretty long time, further than humanity can, by many, many years. And the regeneration process, I think it's, debatable whether this is something put in place to extend their life. I often wonder if it's actually to, if you're a Time Lord and you're living naturally, you could probably live to 5,000 years old. But if you put a regeneration cycle in your system, maybe you can live to 10, but your system's weakened. And thus you could conceivably, almost like Russian roulette on the aging of a Time Lord kind of thing. And so, basically, to wrap this up, because I'm getting close to the 15-minute mark, basically, it's always going to conflict, and there are going to be many elements that don't, come together cohesively and make sense. I kind of have a headache now because I've been just going a mile a minute. But, thank you for the comment, and I appreciate any future comments that come from you or any other users. And I hope this kind of addressed the issue a little bit. So, for now, this is SXE Blues signing off.